This is Family Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Tori Jenae for the first time. Welcome to the Family Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to talk to people from around the world, and this is the first time you've been on the show. Welcome
Yes.
again. And before we get to the heart of your story, we always ask every guest a couple questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Oh gosh, what motivates me is making a difference in the world. And why I do what I do is I became the person that I needed a long time ago. I had a lot of trauma and tragedy, and I've spent 26 years learning how to heal those things so that people can be more happy, more successful, and live their truth. So that's what keeps me going after doing this kind of work this long.
That's awesome. And we're going to focus on this topic of the hidden trauma behind the hustle culture. And also, we just note that you are the creator of the Reclamation Method, TM trademarked. And we've got your link there, torijenae.com, so people can check that out, to get some background.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
but like, if you tell your story, like, where did you start as like a confidence coach, speaker, and creator of this Reclamation Method? Maybe you want to give it the backstory.
Yeah, I love to kind of tell people, today I sit in front of you as a woman with multiple degrees in psychology and having her own business for 13 years. And I live in Beverly Hills, California. But that is not where I started. I was actually conceived by an addict. My mom had addiction problems. And there was a lot of, like I said, tragedy and trauma growing up. I've lost almost my whole family. I've been through divorce. I've been through major burnout. Like you name it, there isn't a fire I haven't really walked through in this life. And so that's what got me started. I do have all the degrees, but I really walked this path personally. I've had to heal myself from things that feel like impossible to heal. But today we're going to talk about burnout. So, what I want high performers to know, or anyone hustling in the creative space, is that a lot of us are hustling from survival and not enoughness. And that's when we shift that from within, that's when we actually start thriving and creating from a totally different space. So that's what I'm excited to talk about today. And I've had to do that. I've had to rebuild my life many times and, like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So I'm excited to talk about like some really true tips and tools of how to do that.
So do you actually have your book out in the world, or you're still working on presenting it?
I'm still working on presenting it. Life keeps giving me new lessons. I lost most of my family, passed away, and then I went through a divorce after a really long time. So my life keeps evolving to add more chapters. So I think I'm just going to
Okay.
have to complete it at this
Working on it.
point. Yeah.
Well, it's a work in progress. Like, I'm an artist. I've got a bunch of things that I'm in process in terms of music. Musicians, we got these projects, and sometimes I've got like 2 albums in the can that I keep on tinkering with and haven't actually put out.
Oh yeah,
And
I
then
work with so
sometimes
many
I'll have
creative
an
people.
album and I'll just do it in a month and just put it out. But these
Yeah.
last 2 I've been holding on to for the last 2 years, tinkering with it. So
Well,
I
that must
understand.
mean they're more special to your soul.
Yeah. Well, you never know when you're an artist. Like, you know when it's done. It's like a cook, you know when it's ready. You're
Yeah,
baking, like,
exactly.
yeah, I know when it's ready when it's ready.
And I feel like our deepest work, especially when it comes creatively, is we have the most resistance to putting it out into the world. So I always share that with people, like not in a negative way, but in a like we're still refining it because we know we're putting something special on the line.
Yeah, because there's that thing about also, like, you gotta have this kinda, this push and pull. Like, as an artist, like, there's a lot of stuff that's on the you talk to film directors, like, there's all this stuff on the cutting room floor. There's
Absolutely.
all these things when you're a writer that you didn't put into the book, and maybe it goes into the next book or it never goes into a book. It's like there's all this process that people think that it goes from 0 to 100. They don't see all the hard work that goes into, building a company, building a method. Like, everybody, it's like a scientific method. There's all these experiments before you have the thing that actually works. Like the moon
Absolutely.
moon landing, like how many missions did they had to do to create an Apollo rocket? You know,
Yeah.
there's a
That
lot of iteration.
there is. And it's like that's where all the wisdom comes in. And I think that's what's hard to remember in the creative process is like that's what made the thing that comes out of it is like all, pressure creates diamonds. So all of that experience and allowing that, I feel like creatives particularly like we're channeling something like our creativity just comes through us. And so I love, I would call you like a multi-passionate entrepreneur. So multiple things come through and it's like you're not sure what to birth first.
Yeah, it's like the muse is like I think all creatives are in tune with this like universal muse.
Absolutely.
And we were able to take like the thing about that creative can do that people I think everybody can do it and they actually do, but they don't call themselves creatives. Every day you creatively work out solutions to problems and you aren't called Van Gogh, you're not called Picasso, you're not called Dylan, you're not called Spielberg or somebody like that. But you're actually doing the same thing everybody does. It's just the creatives they get on a stage and they get all this acclaim, and
Absolutely.
I think it's like it's just the process of how we navigate life, and then some people are able to tell a universal story, and we take that inner and the outer, and we can synthesize it. You take your subconscious and what's the external output inputs, and you process it into something that feels like relevant, that has like authenticity, that feels vulnerable. Then people actually key on it because like, oh, I feel like that.
Absolutely. We know when we
And
hear something that's real.
yeah, it's like that authenticity and vulnerability in a world where there's a lot of cloning, where there's a
Absolutely.
lot of people just wanting to get views.
Or what I call fake vulnerability.
Yeah. And some people think they're not authentic if they don't get enough, like, I don't know, people don't register their approval. Like if you're like on the net and you don't get like 1,000 likes, it's like, oh, that post didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
When
It's
you
always
actually hit,
remembering.
yeah, you
Yeah.
could
It's
hit
like
somebody.
authentically hitting 10 people is more important than fakely hitting 10,000.
Yeah, with a cat video that everybody's seen before. Not that that's not relevant, but it's like,
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
are you saying something uniquely important other than maybe your cat's important to you and that's important, but like it's not a new idea.
No, it is definitely not.
So we talk about like worth and like emotional residue. Those are two different things, but it seems like they might be connected in a way. Maybe you can kind of thread the needle.
Self worth and what? I'm sorry, I
Uh,
didn't catch that question.
emotional residue.
Oh, yes, they're absolutely connected. So basically, think of it this way: we all have a past. A lot of high performers, high achievers, creatives, we grew up in often like chaotic or disconnected homes, right? So that creates this inner wound of like, I've got to prove to the world what I'm worth. Like, I live in LA, I'm surrounded by actors. My brother is an amazing actor, but it's like growing up in the way that we did with like the trauma, it's like, of course he knows how to be someone else. That's literally what he did growing up. So he's actually amazing at it. And I find that like a lot of times what drives us is our inner wounds and what will happen with that. So if I want to be famous or I want to be enough or I want my work to be recognized, it creates a drive in us that becomes unhealthy and unsustainable. And we're creating from a need instead of a desire. And there's a difference between healthy striving, which is like, I want to create this thing. I have this music in me and I don't want to die with that music in me and I've got to get it out. And this need to put something out to get all the validation and
Oh,
to feel like we're enough. Because if we don't start to feel like we're enough, like worthy from within, we will be like a hungry ghost that is never filled. And no matter how much we get or do or receive for that, it will never feel like enough. And I know that from my own story. I had the degrees, the house, the car, the husband, all the things that you're supposed, all the boxes checked, the success. And I woke up and I was like, it's not enough.
you
And
didn't
that's
feel
when I started
yeah.
recognizing.
You have to start wondering like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like,
Hmm.
you ask people, like, I know, like, for an example, like, I'm a musician, I still play piano, I still play
Yeah.
keyboard, but I play guitar and stuff, but a lot of people, when I was, like, 17, there were people that were with me, and they thought that that was gonna do it, and then it didn't, and then it's sitting in the garage, sitting in the basement, I got rid of it. I knew that I play piano whether it's gonna be a top 10 hit or big I play it because I love playing it.
Yes.
I think some people do things because they're looking for validation from the outside. And like if you love to ride a mountain bike, you don't do it because you're gonna be a World Cup mountain biker. You do it because you like riding that bike. But some
Yes.
people might do it to try to be the World Cup biker, mountain biker, and they find out they can't do it, then they drop it.
Exactly. So
You
it's like
say,
aligning ourselves with our truth and our passion and recognizing that not everything is going to be your career or the thing that, some people are set to be world famous and that's in their path no matter what. But yes, it's like aligning with the things that we know that we're going to do. Like the work that I do now, I would do it no matter what. It's what I was born to do. I'm very clear about that. I went on a very deep journey to find that. But the little girl who grew up in survival mode, who wanted to feel like she was special and enough and all those kinds of things, she almost became a lawyer. So that was my story. I was going down the wrong path because I knew, because
Mhm.
that felt safe and that felt really smart. And that felt like, a kid who came from where I came from without much money and all these tragedies and struggles and trauma. Well, if I could become a lawyer, then I'd really prove to myself that I meant something. But that's inner work that the external world will never give you.
That's like, the people that want the $1,000,000.
Absolutely.
They think the $1,000,000 is gonna solve it, then they hit the $1,000,000 and they get $1,000,000 and 1 cent, and it didn't do it,
No, it's
because
never
that
enough.
wasn't actually the thing that was gonna do it. And
And this
so
is, yeah. And it's asking yourself, like, what am I really chasing? Because there's actually research done, fascinatingly enough, on exactly what you're talking about. They did research on people who had enough money to survive. So not the LA market, but let's say it was around $60,000 per year. So you have enough. You're not homeless. You can pay your bills. You can have a car. You can eat. And then they looked at millionaires and they compared happiness, and there was no significant difference in their happiness. Now, if you're below that level, if you're in the poverty line, of course there's a difference. But
Mhm.
once you get to the place where you can take care of yourself, and a millionaire, there's no difference in happiness. So that really shows us that the external things that we're all chasing, if we're not doing it from that place of, like you talked about, from like that passion, and I play the piano because I want to and it makes me feel good, it won't be the thing that fixes you.
That really kinda gets tied to your self-worth, because some people, and I've talked to, like, doctors that found out they really didn't wanna be a doctor, and
Absolutely.
then they decided they wanted to be an author, or they wanted to be an artist, and so they gave it up because they actually it was, like, killing them. It was like, it wasn't making them happy. They thought it
Mhm.
was what there's, and the thing is, there's a point where, like, you get that PhD, you get those certificates, you think you're kinda locked in. But
Totally.
it seemed like during the pandemic, people started to find out, like, the things I thought I was locked into, because I had time to stop and think. I didn't have to go do the commute. I didn't have to go get in the rat race. I actually had time to process, which I think sometimes we're going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. We never get time to, like, downtime
Mhm.
to actually
Absolutely.
think out, like, what is it that I'm doing? It just becomes this, like, phoning it in, and then not realizing, like, what am I doing?
I've worked with so many amazing clients, and what you say is so true. Like I've had the gift of working with people in Hollywood and celebrity stylists, like you name it, just business owners, so many different types of people from worldwide. I work with people from LA to New York to Dubai to London. And the one thing I can tell you over and over and over again is like these people run successful companies, they make lots of money. Like I had a person who had an entire Instagram account just of their house because of that amazing, but they melt down because they don't even know what they want. Like when we start working together,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, wait, what do I want? I actually don't know. Like they've not actually ever sat with themselves long enough. They've just been in that like achievement mode. And that's so celebrated. And we're given so much praise for it that like we don't think like you have to stop and slow down and say, is this what I really want? Am I creating a life that I'm just going to need a vacation from?
Yeah, because it's like this idea, and it kinda goes on different ends. Like, in the creative world, you can get into the trap of the starving artist.
Yes,
This
which is
trap
a
of the starving artist is like,
deep
you're not
archetype.
legit. Yeah, you're not legitimate unless you're like Lou Reed and the Velvets in '66, and they're not making money, nobody knows who they are except other artists. Eventually, Lou didn't wanna be there. He ended up working with David Bowie, and he, broke through with Walk on the Wall Side, and he became big. But everybody kinda glorifies this period when he wasn't big. But every artist has to eventually break through it. They end up like William Blake. William Blake was one of the greatest Victorian poets, but nobody knew who he was in the Victorian age. Always plates of his poetry, of the songs of innocence and experience, were on metal plates in a barn. Now he actually put them on these metal plates, and they were found after his death. And he
Mm,
became one of the greatest poets of that age. But that's like the ultimate story of the kind of romantic artist that is not known at
absolutely.
his time. But he felt like what he was doing was important enough to etch in the metal. So there was a kind of story there that he thought it was important. He did it. He
Yeah,
did the
that's
work.
beautiful. He did the work. And he did it even when no one was clapping for him, which is, I think, the hardest part of being a creative. And what's fascinating, you brought up the starving artist archetype. Like, this is actually from Jungian psychology. This is very old, it's been around for a long time. And I find a lot of the clients I work with, they actually have a hard time breaking through sometimes and wanting to make money and all these things because they get stuck in that mindset of the starving artist, and they're identified with that. It's like, you don't have to be starving to be an artist. And sometimes we actually have to disconnect those two things.
Yeah, because that's a hard thing. Because like some people feel like you're not legitimate unless you're like on Tin Pan Alley, like really struggling. You're really like, Dylan before he was Dylan.
Yes, and
Hendrix
that's another
before he
psychological
was
thing we
Hendrix.
love is the struggle to the success. That's a big, especially in like Western culture, America, like that's what we value. And yes, it's great to hear these stories about like, Ben Affleck or Jim Carrey, like sleeping on their friends' couches and then writing themselves a check for $5 million and being able to cash it soon. Like, we love those kinds of stories because like we can all relate with that. We all go through some kind of struggle, but we don't have to go through the struggle at the bottom floor,
Yeah.
which is where a lot of people want to stay.
Yeah, that's always the hard part because, like even like I have a couple of hats. I'm in software design.
Hmm.
And in software design, we build like the future. And we always have
Yeah.
to know the paradigms shift, and we have to be willing to have foundational shifts. And I think a lot of times it's hard because I have the left and right brain going on. And
Yeah.
sometimes like with the art community, they get stuck in the thing like the idea of fusion jazz and bebop. Miles Davis was great in both of those areas. He was like archetype. When he moved from bebop to fusion, there were people that said he was like a Judas. He's like, you're portraying real jazz because real jazz is modal is bebop. And so sometimes even if you're in the canon and you decide to move to a new area, people tell you gotta stay in your lane.
Absolutely.
And it's
And that's
hard,
tough.
like innovators don't want to stay in.
No, and there's no innovation if you stay in your lane. And as like, what's the point of life? We're here to evolve. And we need to keep evolving. And what work fulfilled you and what creativity fulfilled you at one point of your life. I always tell my clients, like, what got you here won't get you there. So as you evolve, if you're growing as a human, the kind of work that you're going to do, like, I have a really good friend who is a like world famous, like classically trained pianist. And she just got rid of her piano because she doesn't want to be tied to that own, like that's her only medium. That's the way she's been known as an artist her whole
Or she
life.
wants to try something else.
Yeah, so she actually like sold her grand, like it was like a big deal. She's like, if she felt like she let her identity go out the door with it, but she
Mhm.
also felt more free than she ever has. And now she's actually here in LA. She's learning like how to produce music. And so like, she's so excited. And so I
Yeah.
always just love for people to feel that way of like, you are free. Like my brother started in modeling and now he's trying to do more comedic stuff. He's very attractive, but like he's doing the groundlings. And it's like this totally like SNL style, like funny improv. Like, so that's how we grow as artists, as people, as creatives, is we keep challenging ourselves in the status quo.
Yeah, I think it's hard because sometimes people don't wanna move on from the loop. Like, you have a good loop, and you have the
Hmm.
bad loops. People get like, the capitalist system, I don't wanna come down on it, but the capitalist system kinda encourages the good loop to they stay on that and just keep on doing the same thing that works.
Oh, of course.
And if when you try to, like the idea, like I love about David Bowie, he was willing to challenge that. He would do something like, when he was Ziggy Stardust, that was working. The record company loved it. Then he suddenly shifted to a whole new persona, and it's like it did not sell at the same level. And the companies back then were more willing to let an artist do that.
Yeah, now
To
not so
shift
much.
now today, there's like he shifted like multiple personas, multiple genres, multiple times,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
sometimes it did not commercially work.
No, I mean, look
And
at Madonna did that too over her career, right? Like so many different iterations of who she was and what her music was about.
and it's so today is everybody will tell you, like you hear people saying, "Oh, you gotta stick to what works.
Oh yeah,
You
the
gotta
riches
re."
are in the niches, like find the
Yeah.
one thing. But I love hearing, I don't know about you, but I love hearing those stories. Like even myself, like I built a whole life in corporate and I was very successful by the time I was 30 and I did all these things and I burnt my whole life down to become who I was truly meant to be. And I went through some struggle. Like I lost my health, my money, my marriage, like you name it. There isn't anything I haven't lost to become who I am today. And I think people are too afraid to do that anymore.
Yeah, because it's like it's a process. Like if you're a captain of a ship, you don't want some captain's never gone through rough waters.
Absolutely. So, what is this the saying? A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor.
Yeah, like a military commander has never had a battlefield experience. How
Hmm.
many Green Berets wanna go with that guy?
None.
Nobody wants to go with him, like, he doesn't know what to do if something goes wrong, and you have
Absolutely.
to have that kinda what happens like, there's a jazz concept of there's no bad note, there's an opportunity.
Mm,
So if somebody in a set hits a note that wasn't expected, you don't stop the set. You take your 10,000 hours, 20,000 hours experience, and you kind of go with what the flow is. You live in the present moment, and you can actually recover from that rather than being somebody that needs to know everything ahead of time. You can
absolutely.
actually roll with it without knowing what it's going to be,
Oh,
and
but
it
we have
doesn't. Yeah,
humans have such a hard time with that though. That's, we really like there's human needs psychology and it's like the six core needs and to have certainty is one of them. So I always use Martin Luther King as his quote of like having faith is seeing one step, not the whole staircase.
yeah.
So it's like we're not going to know where the music is going. We're not going to know where life is going, but we have to just take the next step and trust.
It's like a method actor. I've talked to method actors, and it's like they get into the character, they respond in any way, and they don't always go with the script. They go with the feel. It's
Mhm.
somebody who goes with the feel that reads the room, reads the moment, smells whatever the smells, and said, "Well, this is what's gonna go in this moment." And it might not be what was the last moment, was what the few next moment might not be the same either. And it's a hard way to be because, like you said, but humans want that predictive. They want to be safe. I
Oh, we
think a
do.
lot of times we get locked into the things that keep us safe. And if you try the thing that's risky, it goes back to this kind of primeval thing where if you do that, the wolf's going to get you. The saber tooth's
Absolutely.
going to get you. Somebody's going to get you and gonna get, you're not going to be safe.
Absolutely. And we're hardwired for safety. Safety is a great thing, but our own safety can really keep us stuck. And it's knowing the difference. I always give the analogy to people of like, you can try to be so safe that you never get in a car and then you never go anywhere. Or you can be safe to the point where you always put on your seatbelt and you take every precaution that you can, but you're still on the adventure of life. And that's kind of where most people get stuck because fear has a purpose. It's meant to keep us safe, but that safety becomes our prison when we start letting it grow too much. But I always remind people like survival in our brain is the highest priority. Like even like this is a fascinating fact, but like if your body has to choose what to make in your body, like chemical wise, like when it comes to all your like, I guess brain chemicals, physical body chemicals, it prioritizes survival chemicals over anything else. So that's why
Like
we'll make
cortisol,
cortisol. Yeah, we'll
cortisol,
make cortisol over anything
or
else.
anything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So it's
you got to
kind of like
survive that moment. Like, keep yourself safe. You got to run or fight,
exactly.
you know?
Exactly. And so we forget that we're living in the survival mode all the time. And that's why we're in chronic stress and we're in burnout and we're in all these things is because we're constantly trying to hold things together, to keep control. And, I always remind people like they know that they're in burnout when they're in perfectionism, when they're in over functioning, when they're doing too much, when they're giving too much, when they're trying to be everything to everyone, when they're feel guilty for trying to
Oh,
rest,
like a people
these simple
pleaser.
things. Yeah.
I'm a
People pleasing
people
is another big
pleaser.
one.
Yeah, well, I
Yes.
think, yeah, we are all trying to, you know, be the max expectation. Like we have these like ideal expectations for everybody, these ideal worlds or visions of what you should be. And I've always been a big proponent of like the happy accident
Mm,
as an artist. And the perfectionism is kind of a trap that people get put into because the tech today allows artists to go back and be less um um relying on the fact that you could go to that canvas and put the brush down and it's like that's what it is, right? That's what it is on canvas. You put it down. But if you have a virtual canvas, you can keep on changing that. And
yeah.
and and a lot of times, like with the technology, with the digital film, now directors can keep on doing that take over and over. Doesn't cost as much as the real film because the real film used to cost money. It's like you were limited. Limitations sometimes create opportunities. And we have
Absolutely.
this unlimited capability because of the tech to keep on going back then sometimes you kind of destroy your idea.
Absolutely. Because you start moving. I mean, it's even just this funny, like it's such a simple thing, but like how many selfies people will take to get the exact perfect one. And it's
There's
like
no
when
cost
I
in the
was,
film.
yeah, there's no cost. Like, but when I was a kid, it's like, we actually had real cameras and we had to go develop that. So it's like you kind of got one shot at a picture in a moment in time. And not to say that our new world isn't wonderful. It's just kind of, yeah, staying anchored in ourselves and our own creativity and our enoughness and recognizing that like perfection will keep you stuck. Like you're in tech as well. And I love one of their sayings is, move fast and break things. And that was something I really had to learn in
Yeah, the
entrepreneurship because
disruptive mindset. Yeah, the disrupt.
yeah, like but also like build something and put it out and see what people think.
Yeah, yeah,
And
iterative.
it's yeah, and
That's
it's like I was a type A perfectionist with a lot of
like a waterfall.
degrees.
There's a
Yeah.
waterfall methodology and there's like the agile methodology. Agile is iterative and we could have multiple iterations. And like that's what you see like on your phone, like all these updates to these
Yes.
apps. They keep on changing to 1.1, 1.2, 1.14, 1.51 because now we don't have to be done,
No.
right? We can continually update on whatever we didn't know is not going to kill us. So we can actually put it out faster and iteratively update what we didn't know or the defects so we can get things faster to market than we used to, where we used to have to spend all this time in a waterfall process making sure we got everything right. And that was like in the 80s and 70s. And it's like, nah, we don't live like that anymore.
No, imagine though if people could take that mindset into their everyday life and their creativity of just like putting things out and updating and shifting and growing into the next iteration or the next version of who you are or your work or whatever it is. And I think that's what I think we're so afraid to be seen as a beginner or not good enough or
Yeah. Or
and
that
I have this too. I'm just as human as everyone else. These are things I have to work through because particularly like an interesting study is that like type A high performing like A grades, like A plus students are not the best entrepreneurs. C
yeah,
students
I
are
can see
actually
that.
better. Because I was the graduated top of my class girl. And when I became an entrepreneur, oh my gosh, like
It's hard.
it was really hard. I was looking for like this perfect path and how to do everything right. And then it was like, okay, I'm just going to have to do things and see what happens and see
Yeah.
what comes. I'm going to put something out there. I'm going to see what comes back. And that taught me so much more and so much about trust and how to make money in my own business and how to support myself and how to trust myself. And that's, I think, something that not a lot of people are learning how to do these days.
Yeah. Cause the iterative process, everything's not going to be successful. In terms like an artist, give an example is like I could have like 100 like pieces of music sitting in my archive.
Absolutely.
Now, those aren't failures. They're actually like a lot of it is this big library that I use to influence other projects. It's this big archive, and I've talked to like authors that have these big archives of ideas, and they usually feed into other projects. And sometimes it works in this project. Talk to film directors, the same idea. People create this big archive of this just stuff, and they know sometimes it doesn't work. But just
Absolutely.
because it doesn't work doesn't mean it's not good. It might not meet this moment. It might meet the next moment, or it wasn't gelled enough to put out now, but it doesn't mean it's bad. And the fact that I didn't use it doesn't mean it's terrible. I think a lot of people that I've run into younger people, like they have this thing like, oh, like I'm never going to use that. I'm never even go back to it. They don't even review it. It's like that's a bad place to be. You need to kind of review what you've done.
Yeah. You need to know where you were, who you were, what you're creating to learn who you've become.
Yeah, there's a kind of throwaway. If it doesn't immediately hit, it's out of your mind, and that's not a good way to progress because you're not. It's not like you want to get stuck in the past, but
No, no.
you should be open to what you've done and not like just think everything's terrible, everything's unprintable, unshowable.
Yeah, it all has a purpose too. Like I said, like it came through, it had its meaning, it had its learning experience. Like you learned how to create from doing all that. Like I think any content creator can look back at the first stuff they made and cringe. Like that's
Yeah,
normal. You're just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that." You probably look at your first podcast episode and like feel shocked.
Yeah.
And that's just like, that's the process that we want to go through. And the reason that we only want to look at our past a little bit is because if we don't really reconcile the past, it colors our present. So it's kind
Mhm.
of like even looking at those past songs to say, wow, look how far I've come. Like look how, like looking at my first podcast, like look at the quality and the way I interview and all these things that are better to remind us of how far we've come. I think people don't celebrate their wins enough either. We're always
Yeah.
looking at, like you talked about, like the next thing that I'm going to do and the next thing that's going to get enough likes. And, it's like, like I love to have my clients sit down at the end of the night and be like, what's one thing that went well today?
Yeah, that's important, to have that kinda like the little wins and even if you can find the grace in everything, right?
Hmm.
Even the thing that looks like a failure, like there could be some grace in it, and people beat
Always.
themselves up looking at only the negative things. And also the fact that like emotionally, like artists, we tend to go into a lot of things that are, crucible moments that create our art are a lot of times they're painful. And
Hmm.
we go through this kind of process of it basically allows us to I don't know, it's a cathartic process. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Of the looking glass self, like the Victorians talked about, like you go in and you analyze the what is going on emotionally, and then you're open enough to kind of go after the raw nerves and dive into them and not try to shove them down and not try to like not understand what happened. Not that you want to go into this thing like blame the other or just be resentful, but you actually try to understand the pain or any of the emotions that happened.
Yeah.
And
In order to
be
heal anything, you have to feel it. And that's really important. But it's also like so important for us to kind of look at like what happened and how did I learn from it? That's the greatest grace that we give ourselves because everything that's come into our lives, a lot of people, whether it was a breakup, a job loss, putting out a project that didn't do well, that was often a turning point in our lives. We don't give that credit. We only think that when things are flowing easily, that things are going well. But your breakdowns will often lead to your biggest breakthroughs.
Yeah, could you go back and like unpack the complexity of life itself? It's not always gonna be, oh, I'm just gonna suck it up and move on.
Yeah, and it's not always going to be rainbows and unicorns either.
Yeah, it's like sometimes it's like the thing that is the thing that you're the most scared of or the most hesitant to handle is the thing that the lesson you need to learn.
Absolutely.
And that is hard to do because like you usually don't want to touch it because it feels like it's gonna burn you, right? And we're kind of like averse, risk averse, pain averse.
Oh, we are. Yeah, we are hardwired to run away from pain and toward pleasure. And that is what gets us into a lot of trouble because often through pain, we find our purpose, we find our power. And not that we have to have that much pain, but
Mhm.
it's just like it's as simple as if you want to be a great musician, you're going to have to spend hours practicing. If you want to have a great body, you're going to have to eat decently and work out. And that's painful sometimes, right? Saying no
Yeah,
to certain things or getting to the gym when you'd rather go hang out with your friends or sleep in or whatever it is. Like any time that you're shortcutting for short, like if you're trying to sit in short-term gains, you will never have long-term happiness. I've studied a lot of different spiritualities, and that's kind of like the one thing I can say that is a truth for all of life. If I'm stuck in short-term gains, if I'm just doing for right now, taking away the pain, going toward pleasure, eating what I want to eat, not going to the gym, whatever, like not practicing my music, not writing, whatever it is, that short-term gain, that thing that makes me feel at ease or lets me avoid that, like you said, the thing that I'm afraid to do, I'll never have long-term happiness.
yeah. A lot of times it's people want to go for that comfort zone,
Mhm.
and art is created in the kind of
In the fray.
in the fray of all the things that are like the vulnerabilities, like the people what
Yeah.
people like about art is it, just like, wow, that person is able to call those things and be so real, so they're not fake, right? It
Mhm.
feels authentic. If you're spent your time just chasing a term goal to get the most likes, get the most money in that moment, the most popularity, it tends to be pretty shallow. in terms of like the depth of the work that people do that actually resonates. It has a hard road.
It
It's a
does.
and it's a lot more like people had to put more into it. And so if you just do the short term, like you'll burn yourself out trying to get that moment instead of doing something that's more sustainable.
Yeah,
If you're an artist because you love it, eventually your work will kind of have this kind of universal key and people will law of attraction. You put it out and it'll find a tribe, will find it.
absolutely.
But if you're just trying to find the pattern that's gonna hit, you could burn yourself out trying to find that pattern if it's not really real to you. If it doesn't really speak to you, then it's gonna feel forced, and maybe it'll work, but it's not sustainable because it
I was
takes
just gonna say, good luck trying to do it again too.
yeah.
Yeah, because when you're just trying to find that thing that's gonna hit, it's not real, and it's often not duplicatable. It's kind of like, I think in the creative space, whether it comes from fashion design or music or even in my line of work, a lot of people are out there copying other great artists. Other people are putting content out. They're just doing the same thing. And yeah, they might get a following, they might get people who like them, but it's like, I already have that wisdom, I have that knowledge. I'm going to grow, evolve, and I'm going to create the next thing. And you're just going to have to copy it again because you have no clue. Or if you get me in the room and I can teach you about a concept, you can ask me any question because I've spent years learning this stuff. If
Yeah,
I'm copying someone else, or I don't really have the artistry to play that kind of music, you get me live and I can't do it. I can't play off the cuff because I don't have that expertise. And this is what so many people like don't aren't doing anymore. And I'm so curious how AI is going to affect it because I love AI.
yeah,
I'm totally
yeah,
pro, or I'm fascinated by AI and ChatGPT, but I'm also kind of like, it's wonderful that it can teach us stuff so quickly. But it's like through that path of learning, of doing, of becoming the expert in your field, of becoming a great artist, of becoming whatever it is that you're becoming, you have so much more to give and so much more to create from that space.
yeah. I'll give an example, like, my daughter's a graphic artist, and she does, like, hand illustration and
Hmm.
hand work, and she can digitize it, and she
Cool.
ran into an AI-based artist that actually wasn't really trained as an artist, but can chat, prompt, and create art.
Hmm.
And the one thing that my daughter saw is like she had this one painting, but this one piece of work, and all the faces of the characters were all the same face that was on a woman, same face on an old person, was the same structure, but that person had used the chat GPT to create something that looks like it's art. But when an artist looks at it, it didn't have the detail and emotional development that an artist has. The problem
Absolutely.
is because it's a shortcut, it can seem on its surface like a junk food thing.
It is.
It looks okay,
Hmm.
and some people might think they'll pick that over a professional artist, and then the problem is if that becomes like that becomes the thing, then the professional artist, like, the fact that they can emotionally connect becomes like, "Oh, that doesn't matter." It's the fact that it costs less to do the work, it looks okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah, I
And then it
really
starts to reduce the medium's impact, and that's the cost of the tech, and when people don't think about it in that way.
I think that's the cost of the tech and everything is like human connection. It's so important. Like
Y
emotions, human connection, like this is what we can lose. I have a good friend, or I know a guy named Mo Godot who's an AI expert. He has a big podcast. And, he talks a lot about like what we need to lean into most right now is human connection. Because, even AI and ChatGPT can be a great therapist. It's true. Like it has amazing capability. And I've tested it myself to see what it can do. But it doesn't have like relationship. It doesn't mess up. It always says the right thing. It always validates you. That's not always what you need. Sometimes you need
Yeah,
someone to call you out on your stuff.
it wants to, like, satisfy you, it wants to give you an answer, but sometimes you don't like, there is no good answer,
Absolutely.
right? It'll
And
give
and
you
you
a
didn't
list
do
of
the right thing and
you
somebody needs
didn't
to
do the
tell
right
you.
thing. Yeah, and it's gonna tell you something to kinda satisfy you because like being like a good dog,
Yeah,
give you
absolutely.
it's not like a cat who's like, "I don't care." Like, "Hey," like, I'm not gonna do what you want today, I'm gonna do what I want."
Totally.
And
And
it's
that's
like
how real humans are.
yeah, that's like the cat is a good example of, like, AI can be a I was like, it's not gonna behave like the cat,
No,
right?
it's going
It's
to
gonna
tell
create
you. that you
what you
said
want.
everything and that you're so wise and you're so amazing. And that's great. And sometimes we need that, we need that validation. We need to feel like we're enough. But we also need to be told, like, hey, these are where your wounds are. This is why what you said wasn't the best thing to say or do in that moment. You didn't really consider the other person. And so I always, when I do talk to my clients about using AI to like support them if they're having a mental spiral, I teach
Mhm.
people how to use it in my life. I always say, like, tell it to challenge you, tell it to give you the hard truth, tell it some of your history so that it will know, like, this is where your wounding might come from. And I've tested this myself. I've actually told it like a lot of the things that have happened to me in my childhood so that no, it has an actual like history intake
Yeah, you
on
got to do
me.
the prompt engineering. You got to do the detail.
Exactly. And
The
that's what
thing is,
people
like,
don't know.
yeah, the thing is, like, you have to give it the more information and the more different pathways you can give it in terms of that you can give it different, like you can start to go down a tree and branch off and give it more detail. The more detail, the more like a great author is going to go and describe a scene and be very detailed about the color, the sound, the smell, the look, the shading, the
Mhm.
light. Really good authors have very descriptive. If you go back to like classic authors, read like Moby Dick or the classic writing. This because we don't have the video back then, so people in the writing are being
Yeah, they
very
had to
descriptive.
describe it.
And for ChatGPT, it's like that old writing is really key for it to actually learn. It needs that level of detail. And problem is today people don't want to do that. People do 60,000 word books instead of 300,000 word books.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
300,000 word book has more descriptions, is more varied, and gives you a better, bigger picture, a better, more detailed picture of the world. If you go at it in a kind of modern, kind of quick 30-second, 15-second response, it's not going to give you what you need.
No, it will give you a generalized idea, but it won't be the truth that you actually need to hear. So I just always love to kind of drop that information for people who are using it because I know it's becoming very popular. Of like, give it enough information, tell it to call you out, give it your history, tell it your wounds, tell it, the three hardest things that have ever happened to you in your life. Like, make sure it knows.
Yeah, I think it's a tool. Like in music, like
It is.
everything's a tool.
Yeah.
Because there are people like I'm a synthesist and I play piano, but I create stuff with synthesizers. And back in the day, there were people that thought the early synthesizers were not real instruments. Like there people with like Hammond's B3 organs, electric organs, like a piano player on a Steinway would say, well, that's not a real instrument compared to a Steinway
Mm.
because it's electric. It's
Yeah.
a machine. And there was this argument in music, and eventually musicians and critics started to realize like electronic instruments can have the same kind of capabilities as organic, more acoustic instruments. You can still be really brilliant and create great art on them. But
Yes.
so the way the AI could be used, a great musician producer could use it in ways that hasn't been imagined to create like sound paintings and
For sure.
color things and do things but it means that they actually have to work. It's like if you're using it as a sheet to like jump over steps instead of actually create new pathways and new steps,
Yeah.
then you won't get something as with the depth that you what the world kind of needs from artists.
Yeah, and I think that's such a like key point in life right now is that there are no shortcuts. If you want anything great, there are no shortcuts and it's not going to be easy. If you
Yeah,
want an
sure.
extraordinary life, you're going to have to do stuff that no one else will do. You know what I mean? Like, I've taken risks and I've done things that people wouldn't want to do. They would be too afraid. And that's okay. That's not their path, but it's like if you want something great, you're going to have to put into that.
Yeah, you have to be willing to have like these transitions in your life. Like we're living in this big transition point because of the AI robotic automation age we're in. It's
Mhm.
different than the digital information age. These capabilities are making it so people's roles that they've always had are eventually going to fade away. They're going to be AI and robotic automations. They're going to take away whole career paths.
Oh yeah, it's already
Uh,
happening from what I've
Yeah,
heard in tech.
yeah, it's happening. It can take away legal work,
Mhm.
medical work, engineering work, scientific work. Any level of work can be automated with this tech between the AI and the robotics.
Yep, absolutely.
But so you have to start, people who maybe were very limited in what they thought they could do. It kind of opens up a science fiction world, like a Roddenberry world of like you can actually live out your dream idea and make it happen. But if you have a very limited mindset that you only wanted to be on that assembly line and take this thing and just do this or just do this very limited thing, that people are going to have to open up to more possibilities, or they could be like kind of like left with not a lot of choices.
Yeah. No, it's true. Our world is changing, and I think that's not something a lot of people are recognizing how significant that's going to be in the next 5 years.
It's like the Industrial Revolution, going from horse and buggy to like, the car.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
was a massive thing that the people who were supporting the horse and buggy, those jobs went away. And if you didn't learn how to work on a car and you worked with horses like that didn't really translate. And you
No,
had to go somewhere, some other path. You had to move to the next path. And that's the kind of world we're in on steroids. It's not just
absolutely.
one industry, it's like multiple industries all at
Multiple
once.
industries are going to be hit very hard by this. Yeah.
I think, I believe that humanity is always going to want authenticity and
Hmm.
vulnerability. Is always going to want to see a human actor. They're always going to want to see a human painter. They're always want to see somebody playing a violin, playing a Stradivarius. People want to see that. People want to hear that. There are other people that, maybe it doesn't matter to them. But I think there are going to be places for people to be human individuals, and people will start to, actually value that.
Yeah, I think it'll swing one way for a little while and then we'll go back. I think we'll have to, sometimes you have to taste the fake or the unfulfilling to know what really is good.
Yeah. Cause I mean, there's a day you go and you get like the junk food burger, and there's the day you go to like the really nice, restaurant that's in this town, and it's, it's not a chain. It's only in Philadelphia. It's only in Detroit. It's only in LA. It could be a food truck. It could just be a thing. It's corporate thing.
Yeah,
It's like
it's
this chef
authentic.
has their own thing.
Yeah.
And no matter what this big corporate conglomerate created with like whatever, you might that want that like 2 a.m. when you can just get it. But if
Yeah.
you really want to be satisfied and you're like, oh, we got to get this really awesome Italian restaurant, this really good sushi restaurant, or whatever it is, you're going to always go toward that kind of human factor of like that chef is nobody else like that chef. That's what you're going to get drawn to.
Yeah, you kind of have to taste both to know, though. It's just like we don't really know the light till we experience the darkness. We don't really know love until we've known loss. We don't really know pleasure until we know real pain. These are all things that like humans have to experience both to really understand them deeply.
And then, like we've been talking about, people are pain averse.
Oh, for sure.
and
Yeah.
they don't want to do the hard things, and we have so many tools to make it so you don't have to.
Yes.
So
But
that's the
there's
rub.
no, it is. There's no wisdom one. And I think I see a lot of insecurity come out of that. When people know when they've earned something and they actually create success from that, and they know when they didn't. And I see
Mhm.
that kind of manifest in its results.
Yeah, so when people come, to you like the hustle kind of culture, and people are burned out from the hustle. So is it less hustle and more like what gets somebody to understand like are you gonna still be in the hustle, or do you have to adjust your hustle?
Yeah, it's really about like I always want to tell people like it's not about like not working or not making things happen, or it's the thing that drives the hustle. Like we can look at it from even like a psychological flow state versus hustle. So I used to just push myself to do things, right? I'd make myself like no matter what, like more coffee, more like whatever would make me do what I needed to do, right? Like being harder on myself, more negative
Mhm.
self-talk to push myself to do those things. And that's very different from being like, "Oh, I'm doing this because I love this.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm doing this because like when I am like working with clients and facilitating retreats and doing all the things that I do, that's when I come alive. Like it's coming through me instead of me forcing myself, right? Like I, kind of like jokingly like you can either whip yourself into submission and push yourself, or you can be drawn. And that's like the psychological flow state, to explain to people who may have never heard that before. it's like when you're doing something that you lose track of time.
Yeah, when I get lost noodling on my piano, which a lot of
Yeah,
musicians will get into, that when you're on your guitar or your instrument and you're just noodling and you didn't intend on doing it, the next thing you look, you've been doing it for like 2 hours.
exactly.
And then you're
Versus
like,
the
and it's over.
person, yeah, versus the person who's like, I must be the best pianist and I have to sit here for 6 hours and practice until my fingers bleed. Like that one will drain you. It will create negative kind of pain, to where the flow state and doing it from a different energy will create excitement and it will give you energy. And
Yeah,
that's where we get lost.
that's what I find is like people who try to force a session, like the
Mhm.
musicians will put themselves in situations, they'll book a studio, book it for like 2 weeks, and they've gotta have everything done in that 2 weeks. Now, some of them are proactive and they make sure they're ready for that 2 weeks.
Yes.
Other times they'll get there and they weren't ready. And then there's like then they start like being really upset at themselves because they're in there wasting money and they can't get it because they weren't really there. They
Yep.
they tried to time box it, and a lot of people get caught in that time box. Is that it has to happen in this space. And sometimes people aren't able to actually ramp up to that. They can't actually do it in that space. And then they're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Especially creativity. If you have a specific project, all the players, business can be a little bit different. Sometimes you do just have to get it done. But creativity is a little bit different, where like you do have to allow that place between flow and resistance, that place between allowing it to come through and not allowing yourself to just be stuck. So I think creativity is actually one of the more difficult things that I've coached a lot of people through, is like you know, how to get your script done with making it authentic, how to pitch a show without getting into doubt, all these things of like, is it done yet? Is it good enough? Like, it's like, well, you're not going to know unless you put it out there and test it for a little while. And then you can go back and refine it and try it again, maybe. Who knows?
yeah. And sometimes there's like diminishing returns of like somebody sitting there and doing like 100 takes. And then
Hmm.
to find out that the first four were really the ones worth doing. But
Yeah.
some people don't know that until they do know 101 and go back and listen and say, "Oh, 4 was actually the best one."
Yeah, and
That
that's
might be
again, that's where the wisdom comes, right? Is because you did it and like, okay, it's not gonna take 100. Like, even like I worked with a lot of actors like doing self-tapes and stuff, and they feel like if they just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, that it'll get better and better and better, and they usually get worse and worse and worse. And it's
Yeah,
like, okay,
diminishing, yeah.
yeah, do this a couple times with a lot of intention and just know that like, okay, I've got to choose one of the four. Like that's all I have time for, that's all I have space for. I can't keep doing this. But we do that in all things. Like we want to keep perfecting it, keep making it better, and it doesn't always get better, but we get better, and that's the key.
Yeah, I think it's the whole process of, giving yourself enough, like, you have to like a musician, like, I could, like, burn my hands out, like, in terms of, like, over practice, and then if you over practice before the gig, then when you go to the gig, you're gonna do a substandard gig because did you need to practice for 6 hours?
Yes.
Instead of you giving yourself do it for, like, a half hour, an hour, and then give yourself a break and walk away,
Yes.
and then
And
you actually end up not do performing as well because you just, like, had it in your head that you needed to overdo it.
and that's kind of like that's the key factor that I think we're really talking about. It's like, where does that come from? If I feel like I need to practice for 6 hours before a gig in one day, that's not coming from a healthy place. That's typically coming, and that's like being super aware and honest with yourself of like, where is that coming from? I'm afraid I'm going to mess up. Am I afraid I don't know this music? Do I think I'm not good enough? Like it's a human condition. We all think we're not good enough. It just wears different outfits. That is the human brain. It's how it works. We just have to know what ours is so we know how it drives us. Because
So
once we
we
have the
don't run.
awareness, yeah, once we have the awareness, then we understand what our beliefs about ourselves is. And then we know like how to move on more clearly and more cleanly from a different energy of like, okay, I'm pushing myself this hard. Like I can think about myself when I go to speak. Like when I went to speak last year in London, there was like 150 plus people. It was a very, probably one of the larger crowds I'd ever spoken in front of at that time. And I didn't prepare at all. And 10 years ago, I would have prepared for days and I would have like made slides and freaked myself out and, been sick to my stomach before all of it. But it was like, whatever words I need will come through me because I've developed my expertise. enough now to where I
You trust
trust
it.
myself,
Yeah.
get on that stage, answer questions, say what I need to say, feel the crowd's energy, and see like where do I need to go. And I just did that this week or like a couple weeks ago in LA. I did a full day retreat with like 50 people, and like I'm leading and facilitating. I kind of had a guide, but like I just felt
Read the
the
room.
room and just
Yeah,
yeah, I was
read
like,
the room.
okay, this is what people are asking about, and so this is where we're gonna go. And people were like, oh, like where's this concept? Is it in the thing that I like the handout? And I was like, no, because I was like, we came up with it. So I was like, I'll email you guys later. I was like, I'm teaching off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So
Well, a
it's
lot
like
of times that
simple
you have
reason.
that, you have to trust that your knowledge, right?
Yes.
It's like the person who's got the teleprompter and all the aids versus, to help them versus somebody's like, you know what, you actually, got your PhD, you got a master's degree, you got a certification, this. Like a musician, sometimes like we don't have to have our sheet music, like we know it, right?
Yes.
Somebody asked the key, and like, why do you have to ask the key? You know what key it is. It's like, but like, so it's like, did you really need to ask what key it was? You
Yeah.
know,
It's just
you
that
actually,
self-doubt.
yeah,
And that's part of, and I always tell people that's the part of the process of being great. If you are not doubting anything ever, you're always in your comfort zone. So doubt is not a bad thing. I always say I doubt the crap out of myself over everything I'm going to do because that's when I know I'm growing. That's when I know I'm uncomfortable. That's when I know I'm acting in a new way, and I'm scared of what might happen. So it's never a bad thing. It's just it's like shifting our mindset to be a little bit more of a growth mindset around that doubt, around that fear, around like we said, like that desire to be safe and to be
yeah.
known, to know what's going to happen next. Our brains are addicted to that, but it's like that's never where you're going to get to your next level.
Like when you get to a comfort zone, if you're doing your podcast, you've done like 1,200 episodes. How much preparation do you have to have? Do you have to go extreme, or do you know that I know how to talk to people, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like,
I
I got my notes in front of me, but I know how to talk. So I'm just gonna believe that, and then you don't have the fear of the unknown thing that happens. Like that unknown moment isn't scary. It's actually cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like we talked about when we started this was like we love the fact that it's unscripted. We're just having a conversation. It's very real, and I think people will feel that because a lot of podcasts, a lot of content is so overly curated nowadays. It's like that's not bad, but it's kind of like
Yeah.
you can feel if it's a real conversation and things are just kind of being taken out.
Yeah, like an infomercial versus like a real conversation. Like I like the more like a radio talk show in real time is the idea that I have. It kind of also an idea of like a jazz concert where I'm playing a piece, but it can evolve.
Yeah, you're riffing off
And
off
the
the
riffing
energy.
off the energy, you listen. It's like a listening skill. So many people are like, oh, I'm reading the notes. It's like if you're reading the notes, are you actually listening to what your guest is saying? Or are you spending all your time trying to stay within some paradigm?
Yeah.
And then people, when they actually see it, it doesn't come across as being authentic.
Yeah,
It,
you can feel the disconnection in that.
so that's the reason why you used to people did like Playoffs 90 or live TV. Back in the day, is like there was something about a live TV show. Even Jackie Gleason and the old, honeymoon, those were live.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
right. Yeah.
and there's something about a live sitcom done live versus something that's actually done from the script. There's a big difference in
And I
terms of the
think
feel.
for sure. I think people are really wanting live again though too. Even podcasts and stuff, like people are wanting more live, they're wanting more video, they're wanting, it's like we're as humans, we are literally hardwired for connection. Heart connection and survival, they're probably the two strongest things that we have. So we need that. We need to hear voices, we need to hear truth, we need to hear stories.
So if people go to your link below that we have,
Yes.
torijenae.com, that will be clickable. What will people find on your URL?
So they'll find more about me, some freebies, some things about building your confidence, some things about abundance, manifesting abundance in your life. So it's really about how do we do the inner work to change our external world, because that's the only way it ever works. And I really help people heal what's getting in their way so that they can become more confident, more successful, and also create better relationships with themselves and with others in their lives.
Well, I'll let people know that's fully clickable in the podcast description on the channel that you're watching. We've just been live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We will be on all the other channels. you can check out our podcast on, like Apple Podcast, Spotify Video Podcast, Amazon, iHeartRadio, many more. By tomorrow, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Coach podcast, and encourage people to click that link and check out how to connect with you there. And thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Coach podcast.
Thank you so much. It was amazing.
Thank you. Have a good night.